Good afternoon and welcome to the 2019 Northern Powergrid's Network Availability Heat Maps webinar. To introduce myself, I'm Stephen Ingalls. I'm a System Planning Engineer with Northern Powergrid. Also attending today's webinar are Andrew Spencer, the System Planning Manager, Matthew Langham, an HV Design Engineer, and David Van Kesteren, our Policy and Standards Manager.
Hello there. Hello. Hello. What's the problem, Stephen?
Okay, next format. If I can quickly introduce the format of today's session, it will be a 50 to 20-minute presentation followed by question and answer session, but please do submit questions at any point you feel appropriate. It's listening mode only for participants, but please do engage with us via questions. As stated, please give feedback or ask questions at any point using the question bar on screen. There'll be a number of viewer polls during the session. Your questions will be answered at the end of the presentation or followed up on after the session. However, if appropriate, we may answer your question during the session. Finally, if you've got any more feedback on today's webinar, please submit it to the email address below. As an overview of today's session, I'm going to discuss what the heat maps are and why we produce them. Within the heat map online data, there are substation details and also downloadable data for you to use. I'm going to briefly discuss the new Appendix G process. In addition, I'm going to detail our long-term development statement and the benefits that provides. Finally, there's some useful links and contacts which you may wish to utilise, and then the question and answer session as promised. If I can just launch a first poll, it would be of value to us if you can tell us who you are. Are you a consultant, a generator or storage operator, a generator developer? Do you work for a DNO or a utility, or other? The poll will close in 10 seconds. Thank you. Our heat map condensed into a single slide. Our heat maps are a graphical view online that provides an indication of the capacity that a customer is likely, without triggering works or costs, to be able to connect at either 132 kV, extra high voltage, or high voltage, and it's given an indicative classification of red, amber and green, implying how easy or quickly or cheaply a connection is possible. Fuller details relating to the thresholds of these classifications is available online and will be discussed later in this presentation. Downloadable datasheets, which contain all the data used to underpin the heat map classifications and the monthly heat map updates, are provided and provide additional detail and guidance on how to use the heat maps. Of course, we can provide bespoke assistance to anyone who requires it if you contact us using the email address. If you wish to log on to the heat maps and understand how they work, you can log on using the URLs on the slide to the left. So as stated previously, the heat maps are updated monthly and they give a feel or a view based upon the most recent month's data of how easily, quickly or cheaply a new generation connection or demand connection can be given. The data is updated monthly and is based upon the most recent data we have regarding accepted and connected schemes. However, to assist, we also detail quoted schemes, so even if a scheme hasn't yet accepted, if there's a large quoted scheme that may have an impact upon available capacity, there is an indication of that. However, the downloadable heat map data in Excel format provides much more data regarding what's happening at individual sites. So in addition to the web view, I do encourage you to please use the downloadable data. We have produced the heat maps for a number of years now. They were originally a request from the generation community, as they would give generators an idea of where they should focus their efforts when making new generation connections. In addition to the generation heat maps, there was then a requirement for demand heat maps, and they also provide assistance to developers for housing schemes and new industrial schemes. As well as a web view, and I am reiterating this point because it's very important, as well as the web view, the downloadable data provides significant additional detail for customers to look at on each primary substation, supply point and grid supply point. Data such as transformer capacity, reverse power flow capability are all of value when making connection applications. Finally, regarding statement of works processes and the new Appendix G process, which we are working with National Grid ESO, the available headroom before a statement of works MODAP is required. Before a statement of works MODAP is required is detailed within the downloadable data. So, the web view. It's a simple Google Map type application where you can zoom in and zoom out on the substation, and you can see at any primary supply point or grid supply point what is happening at any substation. As I said, an indicative red, amber or green indication is given, and we have a separate heat map for both demand and generation. When you click on any substation, you're given the following viewpoint, and it details at every substation fuller data. Of specific interest is the headroom at an upstream feeder and at the downstream lower voltage bars. They are the potential for a new upstream feeder and potential for a new substation. Strictly speaking, that means what's the indicative available headroom as at last month. This slide is the heat map classifications. What does red, amber and green actually mean? So, in the generation heat map, red doesn't mean you can't connect, and green doesn't mean you can connect anything, but to give a feel for where it's easy and for what size of generation or demand can be connected, we provided the following classifications. So, with appropriate investment and a longer lead time, any new connection can be investigated, and with new infrastructure could be connected. However, there could be significant costs and timescales involved. But at a site which is classified red, 190 kilowatts of PV could be feasible with no real investment required. Conversely, green does not always mean that new connections are possible. For example, connecting 40 megawatts at a primary substation wouldn't be feasible. However, all connections will require a detailed design study to confirm the availability of network capacity. If I can encourage you all on the heat map webpage to actually download the data, which we update each month, there's additional data fields and numerical representation of the heat map thresholds. A fuller glossary of terms which explains all the headers in the heat map downloadable data is also given, but generally a quick telephone call to us in system planning could enable us to provide some additional guidance and bespoke assistance to your inquiries. We are here to help. The Appendix G process. Recently, Northern Powergrid are working with National Grid ESO, and the new Appendix G process is where we provide to the ESO a list of all generators already connected or contracted to connect to a specific GSP. Strictly speaking, GSPs where we have agreed to undertake the Appendix G process. The reason for this is to enable our customers and stakeholders to receive a view from National Grid of the availability of headroom before a statement of works mod application is required, and there are costs in relation to that the generator or customer would be required to bear. As a new generator seeking a connection, you do not require to know that you're connecting at an Appendix G GSP. We'll include any specific Appendix G For the first time in December 2019, we have included Appendix G and Statement of Works headroom data within the downloadable datasheet. For every primary supply point and grid supply point, we are detailing the available headroom before a Statement of Works is required. It is noted that for a number of GSPs where there's been significant interest in new generation connections, any new generation connection sized at greater than 1 megawatt is required to go through the National Grid Statement of Works process in advance of a connection offer being made. There are 2 Appendix G technical conditions. This list may be expanded on in future, but there's a voltage regulation condition and emergency tripping. One is relating to power factor and one is relating to when, under direct instruction from the ESO, we would disconnect a generator. Please note these are only for new generation connections and it will be in the connection offer if these are made. If anyone has any questions regarding the Appendix G or the Statement of Work process, please ask them in the question bar and we'll respond to them at the end. The most common question that I get asked from external stakeholders regarding the heat maps is available headroom and where is good to connect. So as I said, there's a full glossary of terms available, but most interestingly is the word potential. So the potential for a new EHV feeder and the potential for a new substation. What these really mean is what's the indication of the available headroom without having to trigger reinforcement or customer flexibility at the date the heat maps were produced. Detailed design studies are always required, but in this example below, potentially 16.9 MVA can be connected to the upstream feeders from this substation. So if it was a 33 to 11 primary substation, potentially 16.9 MVA could be connected to one or both feeders. And at the lower voltage bus bars, potentially 7.86 MVA could be connected to the 11 kV side of that primary substation. In addition to the heat maps, we produce twice a year our long-term development statement. Our long-term development statement is a suite of technical and policy data which provides information for stakeholders and customers wishing to connect with a view of technical data such as circuit capability, circuit ratings, transformer capability, transformer reverse power flow capability, generation connected, and maximum demand at each site. The LTDS standalone is a very useful piece of document, but most of the LTDS data, disregarding policy data, most of the LTDS technical data is included within the heat maps and is used to underpin the red, amber and green classifications. If you wish to access the LTDS, an LTDS summary is available for direct download from the URL given. But in addition, if you email ltds@northernpowergrid.com, you'll be given secure access, login and password to an FTP site where you can download the LTDS for both license areas. All we ask is that you provide your name, company details and reason for wishing the LTDS. We produced a webinar in 2018 which you can view online, and this webinar will also be available online. In addition, there's some links to the actual heat map data and to contact me or my team mailbox or give me a call at any time and we'll endeavour to assist. I'm going to pass over for the questions.
Okay, we have 2 questions so far,
Okay.
And we've plenty of time for questions.
So please continue with the questions. We're very interested to help. First question, please, Andrew.
Okay, well, the first one is about the presentation itself, and will we be making that available? So yes, we'll be sending out slides and links.
Yep, so the presentation will be available online.
Second question, do you have GIS data showing your substations? This is from Matt. And the location of the 11 kV, 33 kV, 132 kV power lines.
We do have GIS data at HV, EHV and 132 kV. that you can download from a secure FTP site. If you email ltds@northernpowergrid.com, I'll provide login details so you can download. We recommend you use QGIS. That's had some good feedback, but your own GIS system should be appropriate also.
And does that include 11 kV?
It now includes HV.
Right, okay. Because that's new, isn't it?
Yep.
We've got one or two questions about technical difficulties, so apologies for that. Question from Josh. How can I use the LTDS to find the capacity at substations? What information do I need to pay particular attention?
Hello, Josh. If you download the LTDS for either license area, Appendix 5, Table 3, load information details the maximum demand, the forecast maximum demand for the next 5 years, the minimum demand for last year, and also the firm capacity of each of our primary substations and supply points. The only caveat is we don't publish the firm capacity of the National Grid GSP connection points. But for the firm capacity, they're within the LTDS. It's also within the heat map downloadable data and on the heat map web view. So please do, if you have any problems with that, get in touch.
Okay, we've got a question from Ben about the LTDS being out for consultation on a new form of statement and how we think that will change in the future. The consultation came out a few days ago, and we've had time to look at the questions. Many of the questions relate to user requirements, so we're interested in knowing what users want different from the LTDS. Since the LTDS was introduced over a decade ago, there's been lots of improvements in the way that information is provided to customers. It's been an evolution. So personally, I would like to see that the opportunity is taken to bring all that together and to try and consolidate information provision for customers in an efficient way.
Any more questions? Please send them in.
A question from Omar. Does the GIS data include the substations?
Yes, it does. It includes the HV substations, not distribution substations.
So I think there's the data that's in the heat maps and there's the data that's in the long-term development statement, isn't it? So,
yes.
The data in the heat maps, does that have locational information for the substations in it?
It does on the web view.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but not as a downloadable format.
No. So for data regarding to locations of substations, the GIS has that. Also in the LTDS, we give the X and Y coordinates of the primary substations also.
So there's two places you can get that information directly from the heat maps. You only get it on a visual, in a visual sense in the heat map itself.
So in the heat maps, it's a visual geographical sense.
Okay.
If anybody has any more questions, please submit them. There are no questions on our screen at the moment. And another one from Ben, how often is the heat map data updated?
The heat map data is updated each month. So for example, at the end of December, we will process all our December connections and acceptance and cancellation data, and then we'll process that through in the first few weeks of January, and then make it available in mid to late January. However, as I stated earlier, any quoted schemes already are included on the heat maps, so any scheme which is moving from quoted to accepted will typically be included, but they will not remove from available capacity. So available capacity will not be impacted by quoted schemes. It just gives an indication that things might be happening at this site.
What about the standing data that's in the system? So that's our customer connections contract values, but what about things like our demands?
We update our minimum and maximum demands each year, and we've just updated our fault level data for both license areas in Q4 2019. And we'll update that as required.
Right, we've got a follow-up question on the GIS system. Could you please clarify how to gain access to your GIS system? I think we just need to explain that we don't provide access to the GIS system per se, but we do provide access to the data that's in our GIS. Would you like to explain that?
Hi Shay, it's Stephen. Good to talk to you again. If you want to send me an email, I'll provide a link to enable you to download our MID and MIF map info data and map info files that will enable you to use those on your own GIS system, but we don't provide access to our GIS system.
So is the normal format that they email our long-term development statements?
That's correct.
Mailbox?
If they mail the if they mail the long-term development statement mailbox, I'll supply a PDF with a URL, login name and password that enables them to access the most recent HV, EHV and 132 kV GIS data.
And what is that email?
It's ltds@northernpowergrid.com. LTDS is all one word, and at northernpowergrid.com.
Thank you.
Okay, well,
We've got another question.
oops, yes. Questions coming in thick and fast now, just bear with us while we read these. Matt, is there any reason you don't add XY data to the Excel download? Again, Stephen, I think the answer to that is because it's in the LTDS.
The XY data is provided within the LTDS. We don't want to replicate data when it's not required. If you're having trouble finding the site you require within the LTDS, please do get in touch and I'll assist.
And a question from Mark. Would it be possible to give a short workshop instruction on how to interpret the information in the heat map data sheets? Headline numbers tend to only tell part of the story.
Okay, I'm going to start speaking and I expect David to jump in halfway through possibly. I think the whole point in the heat maps are they do tell a part of the story. They give an indication. The heat maps are not intended to replace assessment and design or A&D fees. The heat maps give an indication of where is easy to connect. Regarding headline numbers and how to interpret, within the downloadable data there's a guidance sheet that provides a glossary of terms and how to interpret the glossary of terms. I'm going to move back a slide and regarding how to interpret the numbers. So on this slide here, we have the potential for a new EHV feeder and the potential for a new substation. To interpret that, the word potential here means potentially what could we connect to the upstream feeder from this primary substation, for example, if it's 32 to 11. And on the right-hand side, potentially what could we connect to the downstream feeder of this substation without reinforcement or additional costs. So, say 5 or 6 MVA would be okay to connect here based upon the last month's data. But be advised, this doesn't take into account any connections or acceptances since this data has been produced. Regarding a workshop, we're more than happy to engage with any specific inquiries, so please do get in touch. Dave, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mark, you know, on your particular question there about a workshop or instruction, I think we'd be happy to try and understand what more, you know, where it's lacking in what we've told you, so that, because I suspect if you're struggling to interpret the information, then there'll be other people out there in the same boat. So we'd be happy to get in touch with you, have a little bit of a workshop with you, understand a little bit more about what you need, and then we can maybe run a mini webinar like this that covers those same points off, so that we can share that information with other people. So we do welcome your comment there. I'm sure we can do something with you. And that same offer generally applies to anyone else who's on this webinar.
Okay, last call for questions before we move on to our final slide. If I can get over the message that the purpose of today is to let you all know that as well as the web view, there is downloadable data that is updated each month. Please use the downloadable data and also please get in touch. There's a large team here who all have knowledge of the heat maps and how to interpret them. So get in touch and how can we help you guys more. Okay, I'm going to move on to the final slide for feedback. If you could give your feedback on today's heat map session, that would be great. Open for 10 seconds again. Thank you. And finally, what else could we be doing to engage with you on the topic of heat maps? So please respond via the question bar or email in using yourpowergrid@northernpowergrid.com or ltds@northernpowergrid.com. The heat maps are in active development and they'll be developed further with input from stakeholders, the folk who use them. Thank you all for your time, and I do look forward to hearing from you all separately. Thank you.